expression that was easily caught, from his proximity to the general and the coiled vigor of his physique. His eyes were etched unforgiving below the granite ledge of his forehead. His face seemed well suited to taking a beating, and his arms and shoulders well suited to delivering one. In short, I didn't imagine he had trouble chasing vagrants away from the back door. But, as with all of us, age was gaining. His hair, snipped low in a regulation shortcut, was more salt than pepper, and if only the faintest hint of flesh covered his dense core, still I suspected it was a half-stone more than he'd ever carried. His name was Botha. I was impressed with myself for remembering it, given that I'd met him all of twice. In fact, I was having difficulties squaring our relatively limited acquaintance with the bleak stare he was aiming in my direction, the sort one reserves for the man who raped your sister, or at least killed your dog. "Been a while," I offered. Botha grunted. I got the sense that as far as he was concerned, the pause could have extended out a good ways longer. "You think you could rustle me up some finger sandwiches? The little ones, with cucumber and a bit of mutton?" Having perfected his indifference against actual arrows, their rhetorical equivalent had little effect. He scuffed an imaginary bit of dirt off his shoulder. "Isn't it appropriate to offer refreshments when entertaining guests?" "You aren't a guest," he muttered, the barest break in a steady and uncompromising countenance. "Well, I'm here, aren't I? That would make me company or family, and either way, I'd like a finger sandwich." A bell rang from within the room, so I never did get to find out whether I had done enough to rile him. But I wouldn't have bet against myself. I can be an aggravating motherfucker when I set my mind to it. Botha opened the door and slipped inside. He came back out after another moment, then waved to me. "I'd tip you, but I'm all out of ochres, and I wouldn't want to insult your service with silver." "Maybe I'll get compensation some other day," he said, slipping out sidelong as I brushed past him. I stopped short. Both of us squeezed awkwardly into the doorframe. "I'm diligent in repaying debts." He allowed me to pass, then ducked his shoulders and nodded, mimicking the actions of a servant. The master of the house awaited, and I headed inside to meet him. The study looked like what it was. Ebony bookshelves ran to the corners, filled by an appropriately dignified selection of leather-bound tomes. A stone fireplace took up most of the back wall, even its memory too hot for the day. A solid, uncluttered desk stood in the center, and the man himself sat behind it. It was a nice setup. For the price of the furniture alone, you could buy a half-square block of Lowtown. But for a man whose wealth could have afforded him the most opulent luxuries, it was distinctly in the low key. I'd met the general in Nestria some 15 years prior, though I didn't imagine he remembered it. He'd toured the lines one night when I was sitting guard. That was during the first winter of the war, when you could never build a fire big enough to ward off the cold, and the first thing you did on waking was check your toes for frostbite. He'd come pacing in from the darkness, only an adjutant for company, dressed like any one of us grunts, shit on his boots and a greatcoat covered in mud. It had meant something to me. It had meant something to a lot of us. The general was past middle age when he'd held a command during the war, and true to form, the years hadn't left him any younger. But neither had they taken from him the towering sense of self-possession I'd noticed even during the first few seconds I'd seen him, trudging through the icy rain, as if the weather, not to say the enemy, were factors beneath his contempt. If anything, age had sharpened it, the gradual withering of his body rendering clearer the absolute control he maintained over it. Of said body itself there was little enough to comment. Youth provides in humanity the widest conceivable stretch of offerings, but time wears down this disparate variety into a handful of basic archetypes, by which I mean Montgomery looked like an old man. Wisps of white attached to a leathery crown, the bones of his arms sharp beneath his shirt, a mouth you might suspect occasionally lent itself to slobbering. He wore a dark suit, less gaudy and better fitting than my own, though like me he was sweating through it.